I'm going to draw on a body of research that has been conducted primarily by primatologists, scientists who study non-human primates, given that human beings are primates as well. The field of inquiry is called fertility suppression, and it is the marked tendency of higher status female primates to suppress the probability that subordinates in their group will successfully mate and bring offspring into the world. I think that the evil queen, in no small part, is a reflection of observations of fertility suppression. People started studying fertility suppression in primates because of the observation that in many primate species, dominant females exhibit higher reproductive success compared to their subordinate counterparts. So, one thing you have to understand about social animals, and this is particularly true of primates because they're hypersocial, social animals live in a tiered society, and there are marked differences in the life and success of those who are uppermost in the social hierarchy compared to those who are barely clinging to the bottom, let's say. And scientists who are interested in the differential reproductive success of high-status females compared to low-status females started to investigate the possibility that the higher status or dominant females were actively engaging in strategies that undermined the ability of the subordinates to find a mate and to reproduce. Why would they do that? Well, perhaps they do that, psychologically speaking, you might say, just for the sheer sadistic fun of it. But from a broader evolutionary perspective, the purpose is to maximize the probability of their own reproductive success, their own success at finding a mate, and also leaving their genes to propagate into the succeeding generations. How would they do that? The effect of the mechanism of fundamental interest for our purposes, given its psychological significance, is that social stress, often imposed by dominant individuals, can elevate stress hormones, cortisol, for example, in subordinates, disrupting their hormonal cycles and leading to delayed ovulation or reduced fertility. Females use reputation savaging and exclusion, gossip, innuendo, and as I said, social isolation. And those are all ways of lowering comparative status. That's what gossip will do, for example, in reputation savaging, whereas exclusion is more directly and intensely stressful. So here's some examples from non-human primates with regard to mechanisms of fertility suppression. For example, in baboons, a particularly aggressive and vicious species, dominant females may physically intimidate subordinates to maintain their reproductive advantage. In species such as marmosets, dominant females actually emit pheromones that directly inhibit ovarian activity in subordinate females, preventing them from cycling or conceiving. By monopolizing food, mates, or safe nesting sites, dominant females limit subordinates' ability to sustain pregnancies or raise offspring, as seen in some tamarin groups. The suppression is often temporary and context-dependent, lifting if the subordinate's status improves or she leaves the group. The goal is clear: to prioritize the dominant female's offspring by reducing competition for resources and care. Okay, here's some potential examples among human beings. In certain human societies, dominant females, often older women or those with higher social status, exert influence over the reproductive choice of subordinates. Examples include control over marriage. In some cultures, older women, e.g. mothers-in-law, dictate when and whom younger women marry, delaying or restricting their reproductive opportunities. Dominant women may enforce norms that discourage subordinate females from reproducing at certain times, such as stigmatizing early pregnancies or pressuring women to prioritize education or work over family. This social exclusion parallels the stress-induced suppression seen in primates, though it's mediated by culture rather than biology. In modern contexts, dominant females in positions of power, such as corporate leaders or senior academics, may create environments that indirectly suppress the fertility of subordinate women. So here's a thought. One of the things I've wondered about for years, how the radical, progressive, elite feminists can simultaneously criticize capitalism, yet insist that there's no higher priority for young women than to organize their lives around a career. Well, if you want an explanation, fertility suppression by elites with regard to subordinate women foolish enough to listen to such advice certainly constitutes a explanatory hypothesis, and it's a brutal one. Now, with that background firmly in mind, I'm going to read you the original version of Snow White. So, a little background on the Brothers Grimm. Jacob and Wilhelm, Jacob lived from 1785 to 1863, and Wilhelm from 1786 to 1859. They were German scholars and linguists renowned for their collection of fairy tales. Their most famous work, Children's and Household Tales, was first published in 1812, and it included stories that everyone knows, such as Cinderella, Snow White, and Hansel and Gretel. The collection was not a one-time effort. The brothers revised and expanded it over the years, cementing its place as a cultural treasure. They aimed to safeguard German folklore amid a growing interest in national identity. At a time when Germany was a collection of disparate states, the brothers believed that traditional stories reflected the spirit of the German people and preserved their ancient wisdom. As scholars, they saw fairy tales as a lens to explore the evolution of language and narrative, contributing to their broader academic interests in philology. They gathered stories from diverse sources, including oral tales told by local storytellers, often women, and existing written folklore. Rather than simply recording the tales verbatim, they edited and adapted them to suit their literary style